Welcome to the Healing My Parts podcast, a podcast dedicated to educating and raising awareness about dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. We are your hosts, the system behind Healing My Parts, which also includes parts that function as a therapist and leader in a mental health niche space. We'll be sharing tips and tools that have helped us and many others, while also sharing insights from our own journey of living with the condition. We'll also be hosting guests for conversations to help educate, dispel myths, and most especially help those living with dissociative identities and professionals who treat the condition. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now, let's get healing. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're so excited to welcome Jade Miller of Peer Support for Multiples. And I'm actually going to just dive in and say, welcome, Jade. And I wonder if you could just let listeners know what you would like them to know about you and your work. And then we'll dive into some other topics.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was delighted when you invited me. Thank you. So I have been doing peer support for about 7 years now. I started because I realized how much, just in my own life, I could not find a therapist who had helpful information for me. Which is not to say that there are no therapists that have helpful information, but they can be very difficult to find and then access, both financially and just from a availability standpoint. They either have long waiting lists or they're in another state and not licensed in my state, or all the different barriers. So I started doing peer support just as a way to help other people who experience multiple identities in one body to know that they're not alone. And some of the things that I've found for myself can be helpful to other people at times.
Absolutely. I'm curious. I think some people don't necessarily understand the difference between peer coaching and therapy. How would you differentiate between therapy and peer coaching in terms of what's offered and what's possible?
I think it depends on the therapist. And I know that's a little bit of a generic answer, but I think for peer support, you are using what you already know to help other people. And when I say no, I don't mean like a intellectual knowledge or academic knowledge. It's your lived experience of what it's like. But it is also really tricky and important to make sure that you don't equate your experience to everyone else's. You have to realize that everyone else's experiences are their own. But for me, I will tell people I cannot do therapy because I'm not a licensed therapist. I can hold compassionate space for people if they need to talk about something difficult. I have emotional capacity to witness. So I wouldn't call it trauma processing, but I can compassionately witness a trauma memory if people need me to do that. It doesn't trigger me and isn't a problem for me. I also try to help them understand their parts from the perspective of someone who has a really good relationship with all of my parts. And that took years. What I hope I can do is shortcut the process for people, because for me, it wasn't even about what I was doing or not doing or saying or not saying. It was about the way that I viewed them. And once I changed my views of what or who my parts are, that helped me improve my relationship with them and develop a good relationship with them. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I answered your question completely.
Yeah, no, I think that it does. I wanted to clarify a little bit, maybe because it can sound black and white. So sometimes people are like, oh, okay, if I'm going to do coaching, I can only talk about a skill set or learn a skill set. And I think what was really helpful is that you're saying you can bring your whole self into peer coaching. I'm probably not going to be doing trauma resolution with you, but I can hear things that are hard that have happened to you as we look at potential barriers for what might be getting in your way of living a full life with your system today. Is that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because I think therapists are probably focused on what is keeping you stuck and what skills do you need to build. And I do a little bit of that, but not from a therapeutic framework. I usually get to know the person in the system a little bit as much as they're comfortable with. I usually start by just asking them, like, where would you like to be? How can I help you? Basically, there's usually a reason that they've reached out. And most of the time, the reason is that either they are not in contact with their parts at all, but their parts are out and doing things, so they know they exist, but they don't have communication with them, or they have communication, but no one is getting along, or maybe people are not getting along very well.
That makes a lot of sense and is one of the primary
requests for people coming into any sort of care, whether it's pure coaching or therapy, right? I know I have these parts and maybe I hate these parts and I don't want them, or I can't figure out how to get communication going, or I'm on the receiving end of some really unflattering communication and I'm not able to
Yeah.
get parts to do what I would like them to do.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I think therapists are more focused on like maybe the particular ideology that they want to use with people. There's different CBT and I'm sure you know all of those way better than even I do. There's times when those things are helpful in certain moments, but I don't know that there's any one framework necessarily that is going to be appropriate for every part
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, I think good therapists work from an eclectic lens as well, just because everybody's different. So and we can say if you've met one system, you've met one system. In so many ways, we can say that for individuals also, that respond to more cognitive approaches and people that will respond to somatic approaches and everything in
Yeah.
between. I am also curious. Was there a time that you ever thought about being a therapist?
I did for a while, and I don't suppose it was any one thing that stopped me. It was a little bit of different things, but primarily besides just some of the barriers of being a single mom and trying to take classes and work full time, I literally didn't have time. But if I could have somehow, I think the licensing and some of the bureaucratic like red tape would keep me from helping people, which is ironic because I know those things are put in place to try to keep therapy a safe space, but it sometimes it isn't. And me having a license would actually restrict the way that I could work or who I could work with. So ultimately, I think it was the best choice to not go back for licensure. I can still like, educate myself and still keep up on a lot of that knowledge without having a licensure. And if people are comfortable with that, then I'm comfortable with it. And if they're not, they don't have to hire me.
I'm going to say one of these things that I feel like some people might feel is controversial, but I also think that it's the truth. Just having a license doesn't mean you're good.
Yeah. I have a lot of stories from clients about their licensed therapists doing very unethical things. So we hope that it will be a safeguard, but it isn't always, unfortunately.
That sort of begs the next question. What do you worry most about when it comes to systems working with professionals?
But I worry about professionals telling them how they have to be or how they should be and how they have to heal because there are no rules. And I really want people to understand that on this crazy planet, there are no rules. You don't have to heal a certain way. You can heal your way. And if that involves a therapist, awesome. If it doesn't, awesome. And I feel that way about all things. Like I'm pro whatever helps, and I'm not pro whatever doesn't help.
I love that framework though, because I'm thinking about all of the people that don't have access to a licensed therapist or a provider who believe their healing hinges on that. And basically what you're saying is there are a lot of different paths to healing. It can look a lot of different
Yeah,
ways. And if you
absolutely.
don't have access to one avenue, it doesn't mean that you can't still heal.
Yes, absolutely. And also, like, you don't have to let anyone tell you what healing looks like for you. For me, healing looks like functional multiplicity. I live a lot of my life as a singlet right now because it's necessary. I have young children, so they need the continuity of oneself. But my parts are definitely still there riding shotgun, and they have very helpful and sometimes funny commentary on things. But right now, I have to live as a singlet, and that's just what period I'm in my life. But also, if someone came along and told me, oh, you can only heal if you're integrated, I mean, I personally wouldn't believe them, but that's just my personality. But I would hate for them to say that to someone and them really take it to heart and think that, oh, I was happy until I found out that I can only heal if I'm integrated and I still have parts and I'm happy, but I guess I can't count myself healed. That is so not true. If you are happy, and even when I'm working with a client, if they're doing well, I often encourage them, if things are going well, go live your life. I'll be here.
Yeah.
Go live your life and have fun. And when, if something goes wrong or if you hit a rough patch, call me.
Sometimes I think it gets lost that the client or the person with the issue who's coming for help is the person who defines what their healing looks like. The provider isn't supposed to be superimposing their goals on top of someone else.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. And I can really tell that too when I ask someone, like, well, what do you want for your life? What would an amazing life look like for you? And they don't know.
yeah,
That just really, I don't know. It makes me feel a lot of compassion for them because it makes me feel like, oh, you've probably been told a lot in your life. This is what you need to do, and this is what you need to feel, and this is what you need to. And just sometimes people don't know because they've never been given the space to think about what they want.
yeah, yeah. And I wonder too how many potentially providers or other people who are saying you have to heal this way, whether that is like final fusion or whatever their concept of healing is that because they haven't explored enough the possibilities of what it's like to live other ways. I don't think plurality of mind is necessarily a unique concept across in one culture, right? I think it's accepted
Sure.
other places. And just because you as a provider, whoever you might be, don't experience that doesn't mean that it's not okay.
Yeah,
It,
exactly.
it doesn't mean that it's still not normal. I also sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, I sometimes think that this idea of final fusion can be a little bit or a lot of it ableist.
Yeah. It's implying that the best or right way is to be single minded, like singlet minded. And I think there's all different ways to be and all different ways to have a good life. I don't know who gave them the authority to tell us what having a good life is or entails,
Yeah.
but it certainly was not me.
Well, you know what's interesting is that I don't know that people who don't experience plurality understand the grief involved when some parts do fuse, that there's a real loss there. There are people who get really excited because they see fusion as progress or they see that as this person is moving closer to healing and they don't recognize the level of devastation that person is in from losing something or feeling like they've lost something so integral to their existence on the planet.
Yeah, and I think some of that is just the lack of lived experience for them. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-therapist at all. I am pro therapists knowing how to help in helpful ways.
Yeah.
So I think just not having the lived experience. But sometimes I do interface with a lot of therapists because a lot of times I work alongside a therapist. So the client can get a whole lot from their therapy sessions, and then they come to me for someone who understands the lived experience side. And sometimes I do some chatting with therapists to try to give them a way to understand. And I think I would try to put it to the therapist and say, if you had a hero who saved your life when no one else could, and you developed a close friendship with them and they died, how would you feel? Because that's how I see all of people's parts, not just mine, but
Yeah.
I see other people's parts as absolute heroes.
Yeah.
All of them. I don't care what their current affect or mood or behavior patterns are. That's how I see them.
I think too, most all therapists want to do good. They get into the field for really benevolent reasons, and you do not get this training in grad school, and it's somewhat challenging to even get training outside of grad schools. Some of the conferences are extremely expensive or require
Yeah.
significant travel to get there. There's not enough online versions of training for people to get. So I think when conversations like the one that we're having and will continue to have today can be really beneficial for people who are practicing. What can I learn and where can I learn it? And is there something that I can understand deeper? Even something like, oh, fusion can be a profoundly grief-stricken process.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think something else that I would want therapists to internalize really from our conversation is to trust your client. Even if your client doesn't trust themselves, they need to learn it somewhere.
Yeah.
And so I would really encourage them to trust their clients way more than their own knowledge, because a lot of times I hear stories that, oh, I tried to talk to my therapist about this and she just shut me down because it didn't go along with what she'd been taught. And I'm going, okay, you have a human in front of you. Believe the human. Don't worry about what a book said 10 years ago. Believe the human sitting in front of you.
Yeah, that it's excellent advice. And part of me is just appalled that that happens to people.
Yeah.
But when I think about the field, if I think about stuff that I've learned in graduate school, there were some schools of thought that trended towards a more negative view of human nature in general
Yeah.
versus others that were more hopeful and positive, whether somebody is trending towards their own demise versus everybody's really trying hard to thrive in life.
Yeah, if I have a client that's trending toward their own demise, I always want to know why.
Yeah.
But that's my big spiel anyway, like why. I always want to know why. And that's really the crux of my methodology, if you even want to call it that. I told someone last week in a session, I'm going to give you the $1 million question, and you can take this and apply it anywhere as much as you want. And I just told her the question you always want to ask is, would there be anything bad about X, Y, or Z? Whatever it is.
Hmm?
If you're talking to a part and they don't want to talk to you, why not? If they can't talk about the thing, can they tell you why they can't talk about the thing? Like I was the kid in school where every time I raised my hand, all the other kids were like, oh my God. Because I wanted to know, and I
Yeah.
still want to know.
I think there are plenty of people that have this next question that I have for you, which is, in your experience of working with many different people at this point in time, do you feel like, probably with the exception of programmed parts, with the exception of those, do you feel like you're seeing that parts are primarily benevolent in nature?
That's a really interesting question because I think a lot of times the way parts behave does not reflect their true nature. Not always. It depends on what type of part we're talking about. And I don't really care that much about labels. Like I only care about labels as much as the person cares about them. But when you get into some of the persecutor parts and the guardians and some of the parts that have a little bit more difficult jobs, I do believe that their nature is benevolent, but they've had to do certain things and they've had to get used to doing certain things and being a certain way for survival. So I guess ultimately I do believe that all parts have a benevolent nature, even if they're modeled after a persecutor or abuser. But sometimes that nature isn't it's not from what they're acting from at the time.
When you're working with those types of parts, is there an avenue in, for example, some people will say, I feel like really the key is helping someone develop compassion or love for all of their parts. And once that happens, even with some of the most challenging behaviors of parts, we start making progress forward, however we define forward, towards healing.
I would agree with that. Yeah. It sounds hokey or however you want to call it, but I really do believe love is one of the biggest
Yeah.
transformative acts that someone can do. And loving yourself, even if it's in the form of a different part of you, I think that's powerful. I think it's more powerful than just the will to try to change a behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to also be wise about it too, because you can't just have like my agenda. Even if love is your agenda, when it's an agenda, like you're still trying to get a certain outcome from the person. So
Right.
it is a little bit tricky because when I work with people, I'm committed to loving them no matter what. Even if they outgrow me or decide that I'm not for them or whatever it is, like even if they do not come to see themselves the same way I do, that's my commitment to them. And sometimes things happen and I cannot continue to work with someone for whatever reason, logistics or whatever it is, but I just want them to leave me knowing that one person loved them, even if that's all they ever had. And sometimes it is. And so what a great privilege and honor to be the one person that showed them love.
That's such a gift. And I was thinking when you were saying if love becomes an agenda, that's just disingenuine, right? That's actually not a definition of true love. If we think about true love as that feeling of just, in therapy, we call it unconditional positive regard.
Yeah.
And it can be hard in the face of challenging behavior. But when, like what you were saying, right? What's the why?
Yeah. Yeah. If they're responding to me in a hostile way, then I just have an idea that probably they've been like manipulated too many times. So that's why you can't really have an agenda behind it. My agenda is just to show up and tune into them with everything I have and show them that I'm as delighted as I can possibly be with them and every single part of them. And I will hear whatever they need to tell me. And I don't expect anything from it, but things do happen. Some of them get freaked out because they've never experienced that before. Some of them want to test it, and you have to expect that to happen.
Well, considering where it's, some parts have been on the receiving end of many people wanting them to cease existing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The concept of having somebody who is there with such loving acceptance is so foreign.
Yeah.
You can appreciate the multiple different ways they might be testing out to make sure that it's actually real.
Yeah. And it's okay with me.
Can I relax into this relationship for real? Wait, let me try this. Let me try that. Let me just test.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Yeah.
want to relax into that relationship to find out that I'm wrong, because that's really painful.
And if the system doesn't do it automatically, sometimes a protector will come and talk to me because they want to check stuff out. And I love protectors. I love all of them, but every part has a special place in my heart for an individual reason. And I love protectors. So I'm always like actually pretty relieved when a protector comes to talk to me first, because I feel like if people don't lead with a protector, they're more vulnerable. So I would prefer to talk to their protectors first, because I know their protectors will have a pretty good spidey sense of whether I'm okay or not.
Love how you put that. Is there something that you wish all therapists knew before they start working with systems?
I hear a lot of my therapist thinks that I'm the only real person and everyone else
Mhm.
is just a piece of me that's split off, and I'm the only genuine, or I'm the only legitimate person. And I wish that therapists would settle down a little bit, and anybody that needs to talk to them should be treated as an individual. Like, you don't take a 5-year-old and use huge words with them and expect them to do like the CBT and all of that. Like, you wouldn't do that with an actual 5-year-old. And granted, there are 5-year-old parts that have other skills that they can tap into, but, like, in general, you can treat them like an individual, and you probably should.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're not gonna get very far with someone who doesn't think that you think they're a valid, actual person.
Yeah. I think also realizing and understanding that systems can mask for a really long time, and who you think is the quote unquote main part or host may have actually been 10 parts that at different points in time were blended or highly masking in order to stay safe and remain undetected, because that's what they've learned to do for their whole life. And sometimes making assumptions is really damaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing I wish that therapists would do is do a lot of their own work before they try to help other people. Not trying to be funny, but it does sound funny. Can you please heal your own trauma before you try to touch other people and get triggered and project onto them?
I remember the first time that I heard someone say, be wary of a therapist that is not in their own therapy.
Yeah. And I even have a person that I don't meet with them as regularly as I used to. But if I'm trying to help other people, I can't just go, oh, I'm fine and I have everything
Yeah.
sorted and figured out, because that's never going to be true. And I don't really get triggered by sessions much, but I do have my own work that I'm still doing.
Mhm.
And that just helps me be better at my job. And it keeps me from harming people, which is, if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. That's like the bare minimum, I feel like, for therapists.
Yeah, and you have to have a significant amount of self-awareness to ensure that that happens, and I think regardless, we're all gonna do some harm inadvertently. Hopefully, it's not enormous harm, but you're so right that the more we do our own work and the more self-aware we are, and the more we understand how people are impacting us within each relationship, the less likely we are to do serious harm.
Yeah.
Like, we're always gonna have some type of rupture and repair. That just happens from unintended misunderstanding. But unintended misunderstandings can be huge for systems who have gone through so much in their life.
Yeah. And I also think if you do make a mistake, which everyone's going to do, be willing to talk about it, because a lot of times there's unresolved, I don't know if it would classify as trauma, but there's unresolved feelings when a therapist does say or do something that hurts someone, and then they won't talk about it, or they act like it's the client's fault for being hurt.
Yeah.
So I'm also very open to feedback from people. I've had people tell me in a session, like, this line of questioning is probably not where I want to go today. And so I'll just say, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know, because I don't want to spend their money and their time on something that's
Mhm.
not going to benefit them.
Yeah.
But that would be really offensive to some people. What do you mean? Because I know better than you, because I'm the therapist.
Oh, that just stirred up a bunch in me. I think any healing relationship should be a partnership. I'm super opinionated about this stuff. Like this concept of I know more than you, or I know what's good for you. It's like, well, no, every client is an expert in themselves. And whether we're a therapist or a coach or whatever, we bring a certain amount of training to the table in addition to our own life experience. And we weave that together in a package that's unique for the person that is in front of us.
Yeah. And I think they miss sometimes that the fact that they're acting as if there's a power dynamic here, and they're using it in a negative way mirrors a lot of the abuse that their clients are coming to them for help to begin with. Even if the client's not consciously aware of it. They may not be consciously aware of it, but it may be triggering something in them for a therapist to act like they know better or they know more or somehow they have power that they don't really need to have. Power in a relationship doesn't really help innately unless you can use that power on behalf of the person to give them more.
Yeah. This is not a slight sidestep because I'm curious about your opinion on this. So there are people who say, for providers who are interested in working in systems, but they don't have formal training, if they are curious, hopefully in consultation and getting skill sets as they work with the person, that is a great thing to do, as long as they are curious and open and willing to learn. And other people say it's the worst idea ever and you can do way too much damage and you should definitely have much more training before you foray into that arena. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it really, for me, it would be a case by case basis because while I think there's a lot of value in being curious and open minded, it's also not really the client's job to have to educate the person as they help them. And so that's another case where I might offer, if the client has someone like that, I might offer, hey, would you like me to do a call with them? Because if I can do some of the heavy lifting and educate that person without the person having to spend their energy and their bandwidth on it, then that's a place where I can be helpful to them. I don't know if I could give a blanket opinion on it because it's just so individualized. I think there is some value in that, but I also think curiosity and compassion still need to be like undergirded with knowledge from someone that's trustworthy. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I think it's hard to have a blanket answer, right? Because you'll have somebody who is incredibly intuitive, who might be curious, compassionate, and will find the right resources that they need to be helpful. And you can have a similar scenario where a person's just not. And so it can go well in one situation, but not in another.
Sure. Yeah. At the beginning of my journey, I had a friend who didn't know anything about any of it. And she was compassionate and curious. And she went to I didn't see a therapist because I couldn't afford it. I saw a faith-based minister for a while. And anybody who knows me knows all that shit. A lot of people know how that went. And I wouldn't endorse it at this stage. But
Ugh.
at the time, it is what I needed. And it was all I had.
Yeah.
She was super helpful to me at the time. And sometimes I felt like I got further with her than I did my minister at the time because through no fault of his own, he was a male. And at that stage, it was very difficult for me to trust men. And there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. He never did anything appropriate. He was nothing but sweet and fatherly. I have a tattoo in honor of him because he passed away. And he was one of the early people that really helped me. Like I reckon the early process for me, not for everyone, but for me, it was like if you ever get a yarn spool from the store and you want to crochet, but you need to put it in a ball first.
Yeah.
So you just have to pull the thread and pull it and pull it and pull it and pull it forever until it starts to become something you can shape. So I credit him to being the one who was willing to go through the tedious part of pulling that thread as long as I needed him to pull it. And he didn't get the reward of seeing a whole lot of progress at that time, but it came later. And I don't think what came later could have happened without him doing that initially.
Going along this line, what would you say helped you shift from surviving to something that is a little closer to thriving?
These are such good questions. I think it was a lot of different things, but some of the things that stand out to me are there was a point, and this happened too in different other places in my life, where I had to decide, do I want this to define me for my whole life? Because it's almost like when you grow up in a situation that causes something like DID, which of course I'm referring to traumagenic DID, you usually don't have a sense of identity, ironically, because you have all these identities, but you don't know who you actually are. And so there comes a point, or there came a point for me, I should say, several times in life where I went, do I want to just make this my whole identity? That I have trauma to the extent that I have these other selves. Do I want this to be my whole identity? And my answer, and I'm not saying I have the right answer for everyone, but my answer was no. I wanted there to be more to me than just this disorder. So I think that was one of them, to go, okay, yeah, I've had a dissociative disorder, but there's so many other things about me that are cool or interesting or even like weird or whatever. There's so many other things about me that I could share that has nothing to do with that. And that's really like when I decided, okay, I want to find out, like, what do I like? What kind of things do I enjoy? What what am I interested in? What makes me excited? What's scary? Finding out who I was, both as an individual part and doing the same for my other people, going, okay, yes, you have these trauma memories, but what do you like? What's your favorite color? What if you could go anywhere for a day? Where would you go? Just different things like that. So
I love
finding out who
that.
I was and who my people are. And there's usually a common thread. No matter like how different people's parts are, there's usually a common thread. Like for me, my common thread that was used to build a lot of bridges between people that didn't agree was we agree that no child should be hurt in our presence. So no matter what else was happening, we could agree on that. So if we were like deeply into a disagreement about something else, if my kid needs something, I'm going to find the adult that can meet the need in the way that the kid needs, which is me, just referring earlier, so that they have continuity. It is me. So we can agree on that, even if we can't agree on anything else. There's almost always a common thread through a system. And I usually look for that, especially when people are having a lot of infighting.
That's such a great insight that probably gets missed.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you even got to the place of considering that question of, do I want this to be essentially my identity? Do I want my traumatic history and the disorder or the symptoms that came out of that to define me? Do you remember how you got there? Because sometimes I think people are so caught up in just survival and chaos. Like you have all these parts doing all these different things, and you're just trying to get through the day. And you're so busy just trying to get through the day and trying to figure out what the heck happened and who said what to who and why, that it can be really hard to pull the camera back to even try to focus on the bigger picture of where am I going and what do I want in this life?
Mhm. Yeah. I don't remember a single moment, but I do remember having numerous moments where I was trying to find a community. And so I'm a private person. A lot of people who know me know that my legal name is also not Jade Miller. And I started writing partially for privacy. I have an unhealthy family that does regularly Google my name, my legal name. I've been using Jade Miller as a pseudonym and also to protect the privacy of my children. But as a person, I am a fairly private person. And so when I was looking for community, it made me very uncomfortable to try to lead with, oh, I have this disorder, which I don't recommend that people do anyway. But I was in a community where the person who was working with me in a ministry already had a small group that she had trained in some of these things. And so it seemed like that might be a community that I could be in, which also didn't work out for other reasons. But I just remember going, how else could I introduce myself? And not knowing the answer to that question brought up, okay, I don't want this to be the only thing. And that's also the tension as I'm writing my memoir, which I didn't do for many years, because I don't want this to be my whole identity. And I feel like I want to put a caveat in here because I don't want there to be people listening to go, that's where I'm at right now. And I feel like this is like all I have right now, or this is the only way I know how to define myself. That's necessary for a while. And it's okay if someone is in that place. It was necessary for me for a while. So I don't want people to hear this and go, oh, I can't do that because it's not healthy. You can do that for as long as you need to, but there may come a point when you want something different.
One of the things that I hear you pretty consistently saying is there is no one way to do this. There are no
Exactly.
rules.
Yeah.
There are things though that I think help. So the next question is, do you today have any routines or habits or things that you do regularly that support your collective sense of just being steady in the world?
You mean as far as like acknowledging their own individual personalities, or I might need a little bit more clarity?
Like some people will have things that they do to make sure that their system is working together collaboratively. And if those things go to the wayside, so does the collaboration. So some people will have system meetings. Other people will make sure that they take a little time to journal. Other people make sure that they have a schedule that they follow that ensures time for littles to play. Or just curious what you might have in place for your own system that allows you to do all of the things that you like to do in the world that ensures that it doesn't get turned upside down somehow.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I don't have a system meeting practice or anything, but I've just and I should mention too that I'm saying this as a former cult survivor, so this may be different for other people,
Yep.
but my people, most of them were so exhausted from having to function for as long as they did that they were very relieved. Like, it's almost like you ask for a volunteer and then, everyone just takes one step back. It's not even that you volunteered, it's that everyone else volunteered you. And they were more than happy to let me take over a lot of the outside interaction. It was a big sense of relief for a lot of them because they not only didn't know and understand the outside world and how it worked, but it was fairly overwhelming to them. So they were okay with me taking the wheel for a while, but I also have had the great privilege of building things into my life that all of them love. So there's little micro moments throughout every day where somebody can either see or do something that they just love to do. My little ones love cats, most of them. We have cats and kittens right now. So at least at some point in the day, there's going to be a cat on my lap. I don't make sure that happens, it just happens. And that's a moment of joy for those little ones. And I personally am a really weird person that loves goats. I have a herd of goats outside. So I find a lot of joy in taking care of my goats and watching them do their funny things and be their weird little selves. And there's just things that are built into my day that reinforce that, like, this is a life that we chose, that we love. And it just helps remind them that they helped to get us here and they have happy things that they can look forward to.
I feel like that gives people so much hope because if you're a person that's trying to research things that might be helpful to you, it does sometimes feel like people are saying, here's this list of stuff you have to do every single solitary day to make sure that you are stable. And it's
Yeah.
really nice and refreshing to hear you say you've very clearly done so much of your own work, right? And that shows. But it sounds like what you're saying is my life is set up in a way that is supportive of my system so that we naturally thrive. I don't have to necessarily go through a list of check boxes to make sure that that happens. It's just set up that way.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how I got so lucky to get to that point, but I think also just training the brain because we do have brains inside our metaphorical minds and they do have patterns. And I think one little thing that I didn't even notice that I had done over the years that just came to my attention a few weeks ago, actually, it was like I was scrolling through the pictures on my phone and telling my boyfriend, I was like, people would probably think I'm crazy if they looked through my phone album. But what I do, and because I garden as well, and I'm just endlessly fascinated by nature. So I love to take pictures of every time I get like a little sprout in my garden box. I'm like, oh, it's so cute. And I take a picture. And I have all these pictures in my phone that are just so random. Like some of them are plants, some of them are mushrooms. There's like an eagle in the sky or whatever it is. And I didn't even know I was doing it. But years ago, I was starting to slowly teach myself to notice things that made me happy just for a second because our brains can be so entrenched in their patterns, right?
Yep.
And so there is a little bit of putting the rubber to the road and teaching your brain, but it doesn't have to be like this hard, I'm going to grind, I'm going to force my way through it. I started years ago just taking a picture because when I look at those pictures, I'm not an excellent photographer. That's why I think people would think I'm crazy. The pictures represent a moment. And when I see the picture, I remember the moment. Not so much exactly, it's not that the picture captures exactly everything in a photo-esque format. It reminded me of a moment that I felt joy. And I can recall that moment and it brings me joy again. And so the more you do that over time, the more your brain starts seeking it out rather than seeking the other things, like the things, the evidence that you failed or you're not a good person or whatever it is that you were taught.
Yep. Yeah.
Somehow you don't always have to do this big, hard, muscly thing. Sometimes it's just, if your coffee tastes extra good today, just stop for 1 microsecond and just appreciate the taste of it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. Like stop doing all your lists because they're stressing you out more than just not doing anything.
It reminds me of the advice that I've heard for people who have traumaversaries that are more defined to on that day, make sure you do something completely positive and different so that you start having another association with the day. A friend of mine decided to go skydiving on an anniversary. So for her, it ended
Wow.
up working out that this day that she had been dreading now became a day that, yes, there was some dread, but it also now had this memory of skydiving superimposed on it. And all of the pictures that were taken in the air as she was literally free falling.
That's amazing.
It reminds me a lot of what you're saying. If we're building in these moments of presence and joy in today, we really
Yeah.
are forging a different and new life for ourselves where we're not a prisoner to the past or a prisoner for things that aren't working well.
Yeah. And literally carving a new road in your brain that makes it easier to do the next time. Similar to what you were saying, I used to do that, but not quite in the same way. There was a time when Halloween was very difficult for me. It was a very difficult day. And years ago, I would plan something in November every year because I wanted to have a motivation to get through Halloween to do the fun thing. And it had to be a little bit bigger than like a normal thing that you just get to do whenever you want,
Yeah.
but not so big and not so far away that it felt too far or too big. So like I remember one year I planned my very first tattoo for sometime in November, and I got to spend the time before Halloween or whenever I was having a hard time deciding what I wanted my tattoo to say and what I wanted it to represent and what I wanted it to be like. So just to give yourself even temporarily a focus on something positive, just to temper some of the negativity and maybe the tapes, like I call them tapes, the tapes that play of old
Yep.
messages.
Yeah.
If some of the old messages that I don't believe anymore and don't want to believe, sometimes they just get turned on by themselves. And that gives me something else to focus on.
Yeah. I love that thought of planning things ahead of or after a period of time that you're trying to get yourself through. That makes so much sense. And
Yeah, and it
just
gave me something to look forward to. Just to everything sucks right now, but this day I'm going to do something really fun that I don't usually get to do.
and it's going to be better, right? Like this isn't going to last forever. Oh, I really love that. So you are somebody who has created a huge amount of resources for systems and survivors. What are your personal favorites of what you've created?
Yeah, I think my recent favorite is my System Synergy workbook because I don't think anything else like it exists currently. I could be wrong, and I hope if I am, someone will email me the similar thing if there is one, because I'd love to see it and support that person. But it's got, rather than buy a book about mindfulness, a book about gratitude, a book about daily schedules, a book about this and that, it's got everything all together in one place. And it is there for you to take or leave whatever is helpful. And it's also print your own because many of them, there's a template for having a system meeting. If it helps you by writing things down that were said or decided, or however that works for you, you can print it as many times as you want. If you want to have a system meeting twice a day, you can print however many copies of that thing you want and use it. I really made it to be customizable for everyone, and it's print yourself for a reason because you may need more copies. So I could have sold it bound and ready, but I want people to be able to use it in a way that feels best for them. And there may be things in there, morning check-ins for parts that people don't want because maybe they don't have a lot of type A personalities. And that's totally fine. If they don't need those, they don't have to use it, but it's all there. And there's activities for littles to do. All the bigger ones talk about grown-up stuff. There's also coloring pages for older people because I know older people like to color. So there's all different things. There's a few sections that are about goals. There's some sections about, all of them come with reflective exercises and prompts for people who like to either just think about it on their own time, or some people like me like to write stuff down. So there's always reflective questions. There's a section on self-hatred. Some of the like big pillars that I feel like keep dissociation in place, I tried to address some of those. But I can't address everything in a workbook. So those are some of the major ones. It's already 150 pages. So I had to try to pick the ones that I felt were the biggest and
Yeah.
most important. So there's some real serious stuff in it. And then there's some more like housekeeping. If this helps you to give your littles a chore list, if that helps, there's one in there. If they don't like to do chores or don't know how or whatever, then just leave it. Maybe one day they might want to. But that's probably one of my favorite ones recently. I think my all-time favorite's going to have to be Dear Little Ones because it kind of came from nowhere. And really, I hope to sell enough copies to cover the cost of the illustrator. And now here I am 10 years later, and it still earns monthly royalties. And I don't ever even market the thing. So It's the little book that could. That's what I call it. The little book that could.
Oh,
And Dear Little Ones was really my love letter to the world, because I don't think a lot of people know this, but I actually wrote it when I was still being actively trafficked.
oh wow.
And I thought I might die. Like, I thought they were going to kill me. And so I just thought, if I'm not around to speak to people anymore, what would I want to tell them? And that book came from it.
That's heart-wrenching and beautiful all at the same time.
It's a happy thing for me now, because I just love how much it's done for other people. And I think it probably helped me to write it in a lot of ways.
It's its own beacon of hope in so many ways.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's probably my all-time favorite.
That's so moving, honestly. Do you have a tool that you've made that ended up helping providers in ways that you didn't expect?
Probably Dear Little Ones has done that, because
Yeah.
I get just as many reviews from therapists as I do from multiples. So I really didn't expect that book to do anything, to be honest, and it's done so much. I just really wanted to give it to a few close friends, and that was the only plan I had for it. And now it's been around the world a few different times. And
I was just thinking that, like, I'm just going to give it to a couple of friends, and now it's this international thing, which is, it's really beautiful because it helps so many people.
Thank
You know,
you.
you have things
That's really the
actually.
biggest gift for me, is that it has helped so many people, because I'm never going to be able to talk to each of those people individually. So that's one of the
Yeah.
things I love about the written word, because your voice can still speak even after you, or if you cannot be there physically,
Yeah.
you can still speak through your writing.
Yeah. It's definitely an indelible mark on the world, right?
Thank you.
I'm thinking about tools. And for people who are listening who have been around since the beginning of the podcast, it's worth pointing out that if you listened to the episode with Holly and Dylan and Petals of a Rose, and Holly was talking about the template letter that she used for her medical providers, it was Jade's template.
Oh, yeah, that's so
Yeah.
great. I'm so glad they were able to use that. And that is free, I believe, somewhere on my website. If not, I'll make sure it is. And it's also in the workbook. That is the
Oh,
only
nice.
thing that I duplicated into the workbook. None of the rest of my tools have duplicate information, unless it's just like something basic that's appropriate to duplicate.
Yeah.
But it's not a bunch of the same tool remixed. It's all completely different new stuff.
That's great. There is a link to it on the episode that Holly and Dylan are in. We linked to the tool on your site, but it just occurred to me that it would be worth pointing out to people that it is the same person. That's the same Jade that did that tool that we talked about back then that is
Yeah.
talking with us today, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I believe it's also on my Facebook page if anyone should need it. I think it's one of the pin posts, maybe, the peer support for multiples on Facebook. If you look me up, I believe there's a copy of it pinned to the top if they need to find it and for some reason they can't.
Perfect. And we can actually pin it in show notes too, just so people have it. And we'll
Great.
pin the other tools that you talked about, your workbook I'll get pinned in the show notes as well, which I think will be great for people to explore because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, people have told me over the years, like, you need to charge more, you need to charge for things, you need to charge for this, you need to charge for that. And I'm like, I see your point. And yes, I do have bills, I need to live. But also, if not for people giving away free information, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
So I try to give away as much as I can, because there's probably a lot of people like me who can't just go spend the money that it takes. So that it's always been more important to me to help people than getting the right dollar amount for whatever it is that I've produced. And also, if anyone needs any of my resources and money is a problem, just email me. You don't have to tell me why. I won't pry. Just tell me you need access to something and I'll give it to you.
I feel really aligned with that.
Yeah.
Because it's important. I mean, if the goal is really to be helpful to people, right? It's that tension between, yes, I have to pay the mortgage and I really want to be helpful. And we know what it's like to be in that place of desperately
Yes.
needing the support and help and not being able to get it. Can we be that bridge today?
Absolutely. Yep. And the universe has got my back. I've always believed that even if it's not in money, the universe is going to pay me back with something good.
Yeah.
I believe that I've been repaid many times, even if it's just character growth or whatever it is.
This is such a great segue into speaking about these beautiful things that are on the horizon for you. You have a dream.
I do. It is closer to becoming reality now than it ever has.
So I wonder.
I know you want me to talk about the respite center.
I do.
Yes, I found out about the existence of peer respite centers probably a couple of years ago. I never heard of that. I didn't know they existed. I didn't know what they were. So a peer respite center in general is a center where people can go who need help, and they can get support from people with lived experience for whatever they're going through. Now, in general, a peer respite center would accept any, whether it's substance abuse, drug withdrawal, any sort of mental health issue. Generally, they're more just like broad category, they're more generalized. But my dream is to have a peer respite center that is specifically for people with dissociative experiences. They do not need a diagnosis. If they have one, that's fine. But they don't need a diagnosis formally, at least not at this time. But my vision is for it to be exclusively for people with dissociative experiences. And I am moving forward with this. It took me about a year because when I heard about that, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if someone would do this. And then about a year later, I was like, wait.
It's like, wait, I think I might be that person.
Yeah, there may be people more qualified, but no one else is willing to actually put their nose to the grindstone. So that's what I'm doing. I have a physical sponsor. They're absolutely wonderful. Their names are Stephanie Krebio with Into Account. She has been doing Into Account, I don't know how many years. But I have a physical sponsor, and their mission is to advocate for victims of abuse in religious settings. So our missions align really well. So we are working together. They are my fiscal sponsor for the respite center up until we get running. Once we are running, it will convert to a business model because you just very brilliantly, with one offhand statement the last time we talked, told me how to make it financially sustainable. So we are trying to do, by your genius idea, a hybrid model where we combine PHP and IOP, just like you told me. I was like, holy shit, that could work.
Yeah.
Because my only worry about opening a center like this is that people would need it and we wouldn't be able to fund it and keep it open, because that can be a thing. But I didn't say this, but weaving together PHP and IOP programming with the peer respite material, which will mostly come from me, is a way to charge insurance. Because I already knew I was not going to charge the clients anything. They'll have to pay for travel. But other than that, I didn't want to charge the clients anything, but I do need to pay the staff. And so we're going to try a hybrid model. And I've been looking at properties and getting fundraising. I'm trying to line it up at the moment. I've applied for so many grants. You don't want to know how many grants I've applied for. But now I'm approaching venture capitalists and angel investors. So if anyone listening knows anyone who might be interested, I do have a pitch deck and all of those things in place if anyone would like to see it. We have financial projections, we have startup budget, we have just about everything we need to get started. We just don't have the money right now. But I have a fundraising goal to have it by the end of the year. Whether that's realistic or not, I guess we'll see.
It would be phenomenal for that to happen for you and for the
Yeah.
community. I was actually going to back up just a little bit to help people understand terminology, because I think sometimes people
Oh,
will get
yes.
confused, right? So
Please do.
the first thing, because you are somebody who is doing this incredible project and it is something that needs funds, I think people can get confused between, like, what is a fiscal sponsor? Does that mean that person is funding you completely, or what is that? And
Right.
if, in terms of the funds, if we know people or we want to contribute, or whoever's listening might be in that category, how do they do that? How do they contact you?
Yeah, having a fiscal sponsor means that I am basically borrowing my fiscal sponsor's nonprofit status for the startup funds. So the startup funds themselves will be tax deductible. And so they will probably send the money into account, but then just note that it's for safe harbor. So far, unless I have some other copyright issue, the Peer Respite Center is going to be called Safe Harbor, Peer Respite Center. So they can say that the funds are designated for safe harbor. If they want to donate, they are tax deductible. Until we are up and running, we will be operating under a nonprofit model, which is where the fiscal sponsor comes in. They don't actually provide any funds for me. They just handle and track the funds and disperse them to me because they have the 501c3 status. And I just, rather than going through that process myself, we are such good friends and we work together. I volunteered for them for about the last 3 years and I'm on their board of directors and all of that.
Amazing.
So it just made more sense. It would help both of our organizations to operate like that until we're starting up. And then once we've started up, it will convert to like I don't know if it'll be I don't know what business model it'll be, but I'll figure that out later.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful so people can understand that, if you want to donate to this cause, having the 501(c)(3) is what makes it tax deductible for you, which helps people who want to give money.
Yes, and Into Account, I believe, also provides a receipt if they need it, and they will disperse the funds as needed for the business.
Is there a link that we can include in show notes if people wanted to contribute to that we can just add?
Yes, absolutely. It's intoaccount.org. And
Okay.
then I believe up on the top right of their page, they have a giving topic in their menu. I think they
Okay.
have giving in their menu or something like donating or something like that. And you can go find that and it should have a place that they can donate. And there should be a way to note on their donation that it's for Safe Harbor.
Okay. Yeah, it would be great if we figure out instructions that we can put in show notes. Just make it easy for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Yeah, I would love to have funding in place to at least acquire the building by the end of the year because there may be some renovations needed. If we take insurance, it will be completely ADA compliant. We will have a therapist on site every day, and there will be a psychiatrist on call. Just in case anyone is wondering, there will be a lot of peer support materials used, and it will be layered together with the PHP and IOP. And it really doesn't matter if someone wants to come in and use their insurance. It just depends on the insurance, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Which one their insurance will cover, whether it's partial hospitalization program or intensive outpatient. And that's just a way that we can have insurance cover the cost so that we can stay open.
Yeah. Well, and those levels of care are so needed for people. We don't have it a lot in the entire country at the moment.
Yeah.
So
And so there, besides the therapist, all of the other staff will be people with lived experience who are trained.
this is going to be beautiful. Can't wait for it to be up and running. I'm curious, have you thought about whether or not you'll have a virtual component to it?
I do not know. Personally, I've done all of my peer support virtually for the last 7 years, so it doesn't necessarily appeal to me at the moment. I'm ready to
No.
see people's faces and be able to give them a hug if they want, but I'm definitely open to having some sort of virtual aspect to it because I think that could be helpful too.
Yeah, and I was just thinking that just in terms of accessibility, though, you'll have people that would come, and then there might be people who could also just access the PHP/IOP virtually. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait for you to open it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's another question. Is there anything that you wish someone had told you earlier in your healing journey as we're sort of winding down?
There's something that people told me over and I didn't believe them. And I still
No.
tell people this, and I don't think they believe me either, but I think people told me over and over that I needed connection on the inside
Yeah.
because I believe I believe truly that all dissociative disorders have an attachment disorder component. I've never met a system that did not, in my opinion, and I realize that I'm not qualified to diagnose, but in my opinion, because attachment disorders have been my special interest, in my opinion, I've never met a system that did not have an attachment disorder as well, including myself. And attachment pain is one of the worst types of pain I have ever experienced, saying as a cult torture survivor. Attachment pain is worse. There may be people who disagree, and that's perfectly valid. But many people tried to tell me, like, I can connect with you when I'm here in person, but what you need is connection on the inside because when you are connected to your other people, they never leave and they never have to be separated from you. And I was like, that's cute. Please love me. But
That sounds right.
I really didn't make any major progress until I fully understood that I have to have some sort of connection with myself, which sounds strange, and also my other inside people. I have to have some kind of connection. We don't have to love each other. I want people to understand, like, if you don't love your inside people, it's okay. You don't have to love them. You just have to be able to agree with them or not even agree necessarily. You can agree to disagree. You just have to be able to be civil. And I
Yeah.
think after being told for years, like, you need connection on the inside, I really didn't understand it until it happened for me. And
Yeah.
then I realized what they meant. It's okay if this doesn't really land with people right now. It didn't land with me for many years, but I'm going to keep saying it because if those people hadn't said it so many times, maybe I wouldn't have known what was going on.
Yep.
Or maybe I wouldn't
Yep.
have kept like playing around with the idea.
Sometimes I find there can be this natural rejection of that because people will say, but I have had to survive on my own for so long. I want somebody else to take care of me. Nobody has, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily understanding what it really feels like when you do get that internal connection.
Yeah. And there's people that have a hard time with loving themselves. And I
Yeah.
definitely relate to that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I love myself, but I've gotten to the point where I have enough respect for myself as a human who doesn't deserve to be put into pain for no reason, that I won't harm myself. You don't have to love yourself. You just have to believe that you are worthy of respect and not harming. I don't know if that makes sense. There's probably a better way to say it, but until that happened for me, I was always looking for things from other people, and either they didn't or couldn't give those things, or they were never satisfying when they did. It was like it was great in the moment, but then when the moment was over, I still needed more or needed it again.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. I can tell you if you want. I can tell you the exact moment when all of that clicked for me, because there's not a lot of like single moments that stand out. But I remember going to a church service, and the only reason I was there, because I was starting to get to the point of deconstruction from my faith. The only reason I was there is because someone from the community had offered to give me a bag of coffee, and they had a coffee company. And so I knew it would be good coffee, and they really wanted to give it to me. It wasn't as much about me wanting it as I could tell they wanted to give it to me. So I showed up to this church service. And I don't remember exactly what they were talking about, but I've always had a hard time, like in church services, probably because of the cult stuff. But I was standing there looking around, and people were having apparently a very religious experience, and I felt nothing. And I was like, damn it. Like, how can I get a God that's invisible to choose me when people who are visible don't choose me? And just in a fit of like pure like spite, I went, fine, fuck this. I choose myself. And I don't know why, but that decision right then changed things for me. It changed everything, really.
That's so powerful, though.
Yeah, even though it wasn't even, oh, I'm going to do this because it's healthy. I was just mad. I was like, fine, I choose myself. But it did something. Like just that act of will to go, okay, no one else has ever had my back, and maybe never will, but I'm going to have my back.
Yeah. That's
And
so
somehow that
powerful.
it set off a chain reaction in my system. People almost have to have their own experience with it before they'll understand what I mean. But I'm still
Yeah.
going to talk about it so that maybe that will help another person get closer to that point.
Well, sometimes too, right? People, you have to hear things kind of repetitively and from different people before somebody says, like, I'm going to try that and see what
Yeah.
happens. And
Yeah.
so, maybe it's today as people are listening that they hear you talking about this, where some people will say, I'm going to try that, see what that feels
And
like.
just to know that like no matter what happens, you're going to be okay because you've got your back.
Of this. How can people find you and your work?
Oh, I am definitely not difficult to find. So I am on Instagram and Facebook. My username is Peer Support for Multiples on both of those. And my website's the same thing, www.peersupportformultiples.com.
And we will link all of that in the show notes to make it really easy for people that are listening. Can't thank you enough for today. This has been such a great conversation that I know is going to help a lot of people, from folks who are multiple to providers and supporters.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love your podcast and everything you're doing. You're such a
Oh,
generous and wonderful light in the community, and I really appreciate you.
thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. You can find our blog on Substack at healingmyparts.substack.com and on Instagram at healingmyparts. Just a disclaimer, any information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for professional therapy or behavioral health care, nor does listening to the podcast constitute a therapist-client relationship. Please be sure to take extra good care of you. And until next time, keep healing and thriving.